You're watching Ben TV. I'm Andy McNamara. Tonight, my guest is the fabulous Starlady. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Andy.
Yeah, pleasure. You have just come back to Melbourne from 7 years in the desert. Tell us how Melbourne queer community has changed in that time.
Well, I think from living in another culture and living away from queer culture, I think I have a lens to be able to see what's changed. And our queer culture in Melbourne has radically changed over the last 7 years. I think we've seen the rise of transgender and gender diverse identities and politics.
Totally.
I guess we've also seen the rise of the internet. And, I think we've seen through the internet some of our social change practices go into call-out culture. Calling out
Right.
Discrimination or stigma or, numerous different issues, around our political beliefs.
Which is good in plenty of ways.
Yeah, it's really positive in lots of ways. But
Yep.
it can also be an incredibly aggressive way to create social change, and it can have an impact upon people's mental health and well-being. And I think I saw that during some of the Safe Schools Coalition rallies where some of our internet spaces imploded through this, policing and this call-out culture and this aggressive way of interacting. And we do need to create change, but we've got to understand that in Melbourne, or in inner cities, our culture and our language and our politics might be incredibly different. And there's a certain level of privilege or education or access to information that you may have that other people in rural or regional Australia or from people from other cultures or different backgrounds from your own mightn't be aware of that language. And we've got to be, gentle and create spaces of equality for people who don't have access to that way.
And support. So I'm guessing the sort of thing you're talking about is sometimes two people might be 90% agreeing in things, but there's some disagreement on something, and then one can attack the other in the most terrible
and have
violent,
really poor mental health outcomes. And everybody in the LGBTIQ community suffers from discrimination and stigma, and so we need to be supporting each other. And I think one of the things that I'd like to see is the maturity of call-out culture to be going into calling in. And on my personal Facebook page, I've asked people to do this. And there are times, where, my own language has needed updating, or I haven't understood some political ideas. And because I put out that post calling for hey, call in, check in with me, do it gently, people have messaged me and just gone, hey, Starlady, this is why that term or idea could be seen as offensive, and this is a better way to do it. And so my community is calling into me to be able to change my practice, and I can listen, and it's a much more gentle way and respectful way of creating
and focusing
social
on
change.
The ideas, not on
I know.
Taking the ideas, not the person.
And you've got to be thinking, what are you trying to do by calling out?
Yeah.
Are you trying to create social change, or are you trying to point score? And if you really want to create social change, doing that gently through calling in is a really positive way to be able to do that. If people aren't listening, then, but we've got to give people the opportunity to learn and to grow, and we need to respect one another in that process.
Right. I agree. I see what you're saying, and I agree. So the queer community over the 7 years you've been away, obviously, as you said, some rights have moved forward. Is the community less grouped than it was? Has it split up a bit, and are different subsets of the queer community less supportive of others than they were, do you think? I'm just guessing.
I feel like over the 7 years, some of our spaces have been highly intellectualized. And so you walk into a space and there's all this language and I guess codes of behaviour that you're supposed to interact. And if you don't know those codes of behaviour, it can be incredibly ostracising. And if we're putting things like, I think of, queer and trans people of colour have, we want to be able to support those people. But do I always see them in our queer spaces? And if they're not there, why are they not there? and that sometimes we may need to put aside some of our own beliefs to be able to engage with people from different cultural backgrounds, and maybe we need to be going into some of their spaces and learning about their culture. I guess I saw that when I worked in the Northern Territory in remote Aboriginal communities, where I often had to put aside some of my own beliefs, including religion. Like, Aboriginal communities are really Christian, and I really reacted to that, and I had to put that that aside and go, okay, and working with sister girls and brother boys who can be, some of them can be incredibly Christian. I had to respect that, and I going into other people's spaces and learning about their culture, and I think we need to see more of that.
Being trans has been very, very frowned upon by society historically, and it's become more acceptable recently, but it's still, it's still suffering a lot of stigma. But a lot of people are coming out as trans now who are young, and some who are quite old, who've kept their secret for a long time. My question for you is, I wonder how big the trans pool is going to get ultimately. Will there be more trans people than gay people? There, over the centuries, there have been a lot of trans people who've never come out in any way at all, I'm sure. I wonder, as the stigma reduces and reduces, which I'm hoping and expecting it will in the future, how many trans people are out there? Yeah, it's a hard question.
I don't know, but it'd be a significant, there's a portion of the community who identify as trans and gender diverse. I mean, one of the things that I think is that we just need to see, obviously through our Western history, there's been a repression of trans and gender diverse identities, and at the moment we're going through a cultural shift, and we're learning about these identities, and that we're creating spaces, and we're seeing more and more people being able to freely identify as trans and gender diverse, and at a younger age. And we just need to be able to begin to learn and understand about those identities, and accept that there might be diversity within our communities.
Totally. Fantastic, Starlady. Thanks for being with us today. Please come back. You've been watching Bent TV.